Today's interview was the first time, honestly, I can say I've recorded close to 50 episodes at this point. I think this is the first time I forgot I was interviewing someone mid-conversation because I was so excited by the subject matter. Nicole Bielanski from Frictionless IT. She's a fractional CRO for MSPs. Has a really cool story of how she came into the MSP channel through her sales background. And maybe it's because we have so many similarities in our kind of personalities and some of our career trajectories. We were just talking shop. And there's a whole chunk of the interview in here where we're just talking like if there was no mics and no camera and we were just like sitting at a Red Robin somewhere, the conversation would have been exactly the same. I don't know why I picked Red Robin, but it was so exciting. And at the end, she talked a little bit about how tactics have evolved over the last decade in the channel and what's working today. Very exciting stuff. This is a one to make sure that you're going to come back to probably more than once. Let's get into it. Nicole, it's been 6+ months since we met, and we finally got you on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, excited to be here. It was ScaleCon that we met, right?
We met at the welcome party to ScaleCon and learned that we had a mutual client.
Yeah, I remember your presentation was baller, actually. It was really
Thanks. Good. Okay, Nicole, so there's a reason that you're here, and it's that you mentioned there's not that many CROs, people who have CRO level experience in the channel, and a lot of tactics driven people, which is obviously great.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of people who they don't really know how to do tactics, so they try to hide behind being strategists when in reality they just have nothing of value to offer. But what's interesting to me about you, the reason that you're here, is your background. And I would love for you to take the listener here through a little bit of a journey. Tell us like some of your background in sales and kind of like at the wave tops, like how you navigated through your sales career and then how you got into managed services and ultimately to what you do now with Frictionless.
Yeah, for sure. So I started in insurance sales actually when I was 19. I had been in hospitality before then. My parents were entrepreneurs and they had a restaurant, big on customer service. They were kind of obsessed with the Ritz-Carlton and the way that they spoke with people, right? It was always their pleasure to serve them. So that was always part of my upbringing. And I thought maybe I would work in hospitality. And somebody told me I'd be great in sales. And I tried it out. I applied for like a receptionist job when I was young at an insurance agency. And even in the interview, my potential boss was telling me how much I'd make. And I was like, doesn't sound like enough. How about I become a salesperson here? And he's like, have you ever done sales? I'm like, no, but I think maybe I'd be good at it. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a difficult sale. You're making a promise to somebody for the future and nothing that you're selling them is tangible. So it's challenging. It was business owners and liability insurance. So it was about protecting their assets. And I think what worked for me was I didn't really have a lot of prior knowledge of like what a traditional salesperson should be doing. I didn't take any business related courses or sales related courses in college. I just wanted to help people and explain to them what we do and why it's important in a way that makes sense for them. So, I took the approach of protecting assets versus switch to us, we're going to save you money. And selling insurance, you do have to do your own marketing and lead generation in order to get folks to want to talk to you and buy from you. My boss was kind of like, figure it out. Right? He was a figure it out kind of guy, open the phone book, figure it out. Best thing that he could have ever done for me because I figured it out. I had passion for helping people, lead generation and sales. Eventually, I went to work for a SaaS company in New York City. I joined like a team of sales professionals and I was like, wow, this is what a real sales professional does. It was nice to work against others and to have a leaderboard to climb to the top of. And I didn't know that I was good at sales. I worked solo in an insurance agency and then I was 400 people and I was at the top of the leaderboard. So I knew I had something special. I think it was really just my ability to listen, have empathy, to reframe the conversation and to make it make sense for them.
So you were on a sales floor of 400, you said?
Yes.
And what was that industry?
Healthcare. It was a SaaS product, ZocDoc. It's a pretty popular app
Uh-huh.
for folks
Okay.
who do not want to, call a receptionist at a doctor's office. They just want to book their own appointment.
Okay. And you were doing, what was your role? Were you an SDR or were you closing?
I started as an SDR.
Okay.
You start as an SDR and then you get promoted to a sales rep. So started as an SDR for 2 months. And then I got my own territory pretty quickly after that as an inside sales executive.
So you were the top inside sales executive, maybe not for 10 straight years or something, but at one point you were at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah.
Let's dive into this more. How were you beating 399 people at a job you had been at for 3 months, 4 months?
I think this was about 10 years ago. So there was this theory that, you had to make 100 dials a day every single day or you weren't working hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
That was a real thing in the sales world. Most people don't challenge their sales manager, especially if they want to keep their job and continue to get promoted. But I thought maybe I could exchange some of those calls for warm text and warm emails. And this is when nobody was really doing anything at scale or with automation at all whatsoever. So this was all very manual emails, but they were super personalized and custom. Mm-hmm. So I made 40 dials a day. I chose my accounts wisely. And then I had more, casual conversation.
So did you have scripts that you were given and you were rewriting?
Actually, I sat next to someone who was pretty good, who had been there for a couple of years, and I just listened. I had a big stack of sticky notes on my desk, and every time he would say kind of like a really great one-liner. I was into the one-liners. Mm-hmm. I liked one-liners because, it gets the point across quickly. He said something like, it's like open table for doctors. And I was like, oh my God. I said 5 sentences and it wasn't as clear as that. And so I'd write down open table for doctors and put it on my desk. And soon I had my entire cubicle absolutely filled with sticky notes from this guy. And then he peeked over. He's like, you can't do that. I'm like, I absolutely can. I will.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. Good. Yeah. It's credited that Picasso had this quote that good artists copy and great artists steal. I don't know if Picasso really said that, but somebody did. It's a great quote. So you were just you were picking and choosing from a top performer or a veteran next to you going, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Great strategy in the cubicle. I did that many times. So this is what's interesting to me is you're at the top of the leaderboard. They're all making 100 dials. You're making 40 dials. But then you're also talk to me more about the SMS stuff and like you said, warm SMS and warm email. What does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, we were looking to get in touch with doctors, like surgeons. I mean, these people are not easy to get a hold of. Really understanding who you're trying to connect with was important. These people are very busy, but in a way, they're very similar to like a technical professional. They have this deep passion for what they're doing, and they care about being profitable in their business. But what they care about more is helping patients. Truly, they really care about that. So, and they don't like salespeople. They don't want to be manipulated. They want to stick to what they're doing, stick to their passion, but also be profitable at the same time, challenging. So if I get their cell phone number, a great way to do that is to call their receptionist several times. And instead of being transferred to their voicemail, I'd ask a series of questions. Is there a better time for me to call back? I'll just do that. Don't send me to the voicemail. And then I would ask if there's a better phone number, like a cell phone number. 9 times out of 10, I'd get an absolutely not. But 1 out of 10 times, I'd get a cell phone number just because I asked for it. And then I asked, is this the best email? Do you have any other emails? And then I told the receptionist I'd call back at a very specific time. And then I called back, asked for the name, and I would build a relationship with the receptionist. Never really treated them as a push aside or a gatekeeper, treated them like a human being. And I usually got what I was looking for. And that text was more about how can I help them help more patients instead of how can I sell them a software?
Give me an example. Would you basically leave them like what would have been a cold email just as a text? Or would it just be like a text form, like a question? Or what was that like?
A short, casual text like I was texting my friend or
Uh-huh.
texting my mom, right? Hey, Dr. So and so, we've got a bunch of patients who need XYZ specialty. I'm just curious if you have room to take them.
Hmm.
A question. And if they were curious, then I would book a time to chat, right to the decision maker, casual, asking them about what they want, if they can take it or not. And
Right.
I'd get a decent reply back.
So to the listener who's going, hey, when are they going to start talking about managed services sales? We are talking about managed services sales because
Mm.
if surgeons are much harder to get a hold of than accountants or lawyers, they also are, I would say, probably one of the most difficult psychographically I have found to work with. Is like high
Yeah.
performing doctors. They're not the easiest people to work with, period. You have this gracious and empathetic way that you describe them, which is a very kind way to describe them. But just like with anybody, you could describe the other way if you're
Mm.
jaded against trying to sell to doctors. What's interesting as well about this example that I'm thinking about is with MSPs, we find that they always are on one polar edge of whether or not they work with medical. Because they're either like, we figured out it and we figured it out and we're willing to put up with the BS, so we do medical. Or they're like, I'm so sick of doctors and dentists. They're so cheap. I'm not calling them anymore. And it's
Right.
one or the other. And I'm not even saying one or the other is right or wrong. We did medical because we could. Once you get a few medical good references, then doctors want to get references from other doctors. Practice managers want to get references from other practice managers. If you get like 3 or 4 champions, then you could do really well because
Yeah.
some of the other MSPs can't hack it or they won't even talk to them. But let me ask you this. This was, as you said, this was like 10-ish years ago.
Yeah.
I used Salesforce in a previous life. We were using Salesforce and our email marketing was through Pardot, which was one of the early adopters in the Salesforce market for email automation. And then we did have SMS, but it was something like they were like, hey, don't click the SMS button because our sales team was like, we hadn't configured it right or something. But it did have the functionality. We just kind of couldn't, it didn't work or something for some reason. But I guess
Sure, not.
here's the question I want to ask you is, do you think that SMS to business owners, cold SMS, the way I mean, this is kind of cold. It's educated, it's research, but they don't know you. They
That's
didn't
true.
ask for a text, right?
No.
So it's a well-researched cold outreach. Do you think in 2026 people are too precious about getting reached out to and you can't do that anymore? Or you think it would still work?
One, I think that there was a big investment for the company I worked for in brand awareness, right? So, if when I sent a text, I would say, this is Nicole from ZocDoc. They knew who that was. It was a reputable brand.
Mhm.
In a way, they were still growing, but they had at least 10 years on the market to invest heavily in marketing. They had commercials on TV. We were calling them constantly.
Right.
I entered into the territory after 10, 15 reps before me. So they had heard of the name. I think that's important, right? So it's not totally cold. I think these days, nobody was getting text messages back then. I definitely didn't use like an app or an automation. I texted them from my phone.
Mhm. Right.
I think these days I would be embarrassed to show you how many unread text messages I have. At some point, I gave up because there's just so much that comes in. It is so overwhelming. I don't know if it's effective anymore. I think it's
Mhm.
effective once you have an existing relationship. They have willingly given you their cell phone number, and then it makes sense as a follow up. Maybe to be like, hey, I sent you an email. Could you just pick a time? I'm
Yeah.
trying to get this going with you. That kind of thing now. Well, what do
Right.
you think?
That's what you were doing then. You're at the top of the list. I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but I think this is really critical because
Yeah.
I was expecting you to say, hey, how are you at the top of the list? The listener was probably anticipating being like, I wanted it more. I worked harder. I gritted my teeth more. I was doubling everybody else's numbers, but you weren't, that wasn't your approach. Your approach was, how do I make this more normal? And how do I increase my conversation count, not my activity count, which usually those are correlated, unless, of course, the activity is inefficient, you know?
Yeah.
So that
I
seems to
mean,
be your approach was rather than optimizing the KPI at the top line of your inputs, How do I go one KPI down and say the whole point of these inputs is to create conversations? Can I make my own conversations? And it seems like you were able to do that.
Yeah. That didn't mean that I didn't put the extra hours in, but it wasn't just pure effort, like smiling and dialing and just doing more numbers than everyone else. It was staying late to chat with somebody else who was above me on the leaderboard and to say, hey, what are you doing to hit these numbers? Just to explain to me, I want to be as good as you. Taking the time to learn from others, very difficult. I don't think it's easy for most people to learn by example or even to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
But something that this person was doing in particular, he was leveraging like a traditional database management skill, which is list filtering, which I feel like is also not a skill that most salespeople have. Rather than just scrubbing a list of 100 people I'm going to call that day, I'd rather use list filtering to condense that list by maybe people who had the most engagement are in a preferred geographic area, maybe close by to someone that we already work with that's seeing success that would recognize the name. So it was more about like sitting down, creating a strategy, and then passing it by somebody else to say, what do you think about this? Has this worked for you? What have you tried? What are you doing to get ahead without necessarily tripling down on effort, but being a bit more laser focused?
And were you using Salesforce?
I was using Salesforce.
So you had a system that you had a database that was more or less set up. Like, so you had some prerequisites where you'd be like, how do I optimize what we have?
Yes, that was important. It's good to be competitive in that way, though.
Isn't it? But maybe there's a double-edged sword there because people assume that sales reps are selfish and snakes and out to get you and that they're going to con you. You're going to hire them and they're going to steal from you. But don't you want a high drive person? Don't you want those traits in somebody? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I see a lot of IT business owners make some mistakes with hiring sales professionals. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is not having like a clearly defined commission plan. And you would think that's the first thing that you need to outline. But some of them don't. They just want them to put in the work and get as many deals closed as possible or set as many appointments as possible. But the motivating factor is commission. Absolutely.
Right.
And you put another person next to that person, there's going to be a competition. It's good to set rules for activity date and territory so that there is no issue when it comes to the closing of the deal. And no one rep should be able to hold on to something for such a long time and not be able to make any progress while another rep who could be successful kind of sits around. So I think it's healthy competition as long as there's some respect for one another.
Sure. Right. Right. This is something we should dive into a little bit because people want sales reps. They want high performance sales reps. And they sometimes forget what high performance people are like. High performance people are not chill. I am not a chill guy. I've never been described as laid back because I'm not.
You're probably obsessive.
Yeah, I'm super obsessive. I'm very competitive. Now, I'm a really good sport. The reason is I'm the youngest of 5. And if you were a bad sport, you got your ass kicked when you won. So if I wasn't a gracious winner, then it was easier for me to lose than my brother drop kick my basketball 3 fences down and say, go get it, if I would beat him. So I got really good at winning. Do you know what I mean? And like being a gracious winner because it was safer for me. And that honestly has helped me a lot. When you're a top performer at a company, you still want to be comrades and you still want the support of the team. You know what I mean? Sure. You don't want to alienate them and like, you don't want to go Michael Jordan and step on their backs to get ahead of them. Like, Michael Jordan has so many enemies because of the way he was, because he's not a likable person. You know, he's not a nice guy. Listen to any interview of Michael Jordan. He's not right in the head. That's why he's like the GOAT, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, there's something about that where I'm not justifying poor behavior. I'm not saying like, hey, the sales guy's going to come in and dominate you and he's going to be a jerk or she's going to be super difficult and that's just the way it is. That's not what I'm saying. You just have to remember that like it's a totally different breed of person who wants to get paid commensurate to the value they generate for you directly.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that SaaS company that I worked for was the first time that somebody sat me down and said, we understand salespeople. Here's a map of what makes a salesperson really great and where they focus and where they excel. It's all of these areas. And I'm like, oh my God, that is absolutely me. And they really truly understood the salesperson. Being in a world with technology professionals and we just have such opposite ways of thinking, there is this disconnect, right? Oh, why is she so rude? Why is she so direct? But it does help us deals help people see, it's really about reframing the mindset. It isn't so much about convincing somebody to do something that they shouldn't do or that only I benefit from. Absolutely, 100%, there needs to be a mutual benefit for both parties. If there is no mutual benefit, we really aren't probably going to get to an agreement of exchange for value of money. I work with many IT professionals that feel shameful for following up on an opportunity where for me, naturally, I'm going to chase that deal down until I get a no. And that may allow me to close more deals by nature.
Right. It's such a perfect example what you just said, like following up, being embarrassed or ashamed for following up with somebody who asked you for a quote.
Yeah.
They came to you. Then you give it to them and they say nothing and you go, well, I'd hate to be a bother. Right now, they're technically the bother.
Right.
They bothered you and then they're not even going to give you any context or follow up. But that's one great example. What are some of these other personality examples? Because I want to name this. This is what I want to achieve right now. For the MSP owner who's listening or the MSP sales rep who's listening, we could do some couples therapy right now to help them understand like what is a strength and a weakness that a salesperson has and what's a strength and a weakness that the technologist has that they're going to misalign that might be causes or sources of conflict. And you probably see this, Nicole, because you've coached a lot of teams. But what are some of any examples that are coming to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time on my sales calls, well, first, I don't try to sell over email. I see that a lot where somebody who's more technical will try to be more specific with the details. They'll try to, answer the question in full over text. Usually I'm like, hey, that's a great question. Let's jump on a call and let's talk about it. I want to show you. And I do want to show somebody something visually. I know that if I have the goal of, changing someone's perspective on how they see a problem and how they may imagine us being the solution, that it's not going to be as simple as just texting them how we're going to do it, right?
Right.
It may be a journey of understanding, and that's going to be best when we're on a call and there's a visual element. So I see that a lot. And then on that call, I don't do a whole lot of talking. I ask a lot of questions, and then I'm super mindful with how much I'm talking at them. I would prefer the person on the other end to come to their own conclusions, for them to say out loud what their problem is, because typically it's the first time that they're saying it with their own words out loud. Maybe they may be thinking it, but for them to say it out loud is really powerful. Usually I talk about, I ask them what they've tried so far, and kind of tout them on their experience, because where they've gotten so far, I mean, what got them there is they've got to have something to get them from where they are to where they are now. And talk about problems like as blockers that could simply be removed with our assistance instead of us being this fantastical solution that's going to change the world. They probably have done a lot to get where they are, and they just need something removed to get to where they really want to be.
That's a great example. Something I'm thinking about as you're saying it. Obviously, you and I both know, Sandler always said, no human can convince another human of anything. And good salespeople don't convince. Of course, they guide. There's a huge difference by asking questions. But I've never made this connection before. One of the reasons I do this exercise early in sales training where I say, hey, write me a list of we do word association with sales. And they always write like the first 10 words are like what they think you want to hear. Like high drive, never give up, professional, helpful. And then you make them write for like 5 minutes and it gets into all the biases, selfish, greedy,
Mm,
liar.
mm.
And that we find like, oh, you think sales is inherently wrong and selfish. That's why you won't do it. And that's why you keep firing people who try to do it for you. But here's my point is that how many MSP owners have I talked to who go in with a presentation and they are fully trying to debate, they're trying to be right and
Mm.
convince another person using their expertise as the defense to
Mm.
say, I'm smarter than you, I'm righter than you, here's why. And a
Well,
salesperson would never in a million years do that because they know it doesn't work.
yeah.
But isn't that interesting? Because the bias against salespeople is that they're pushy and that they're manipulative, but isn't it much more pushy and manipulative to go with a full-on ground war of expertise as a subject matter expert? I don't know. You think there's something there?
Yeah, I think that there are bad salespeople out there that just become the example, right? Just like um, unethical lawyers, and then all lawyers get this air of being, snakes, right?
Yeah.
So there are just because sales is not easy, right? To be a solution salesperson, you really have to understand the human psyche, and you have to leverage the power for good, not evil, right? Because there's a fine line between guiding and manipulating. So, those that do understand the power could use it for evil, and then they're also the bad example. But there is always buyer's remorse. Like you can't convince somebody of something for too long. You could manipulate them into something, but eventually they're going to come back around and return the product or cancel the service if it doesn't live up to its expectations. So even if you were to take that route in the long term, it doesn't work. So a good salesperson, as you put it, is they must make the investments in truly understanding the person that they're speaking with. You're right, it's not about being right. Someone told me recently, you can either be right or you can be rich. And it makes a lot of sense. It's more about what they care about, but figuring that out is difficult. It's not easy. So it's easier to be like, well, oh, she's pretty, so everyone's going to buy from her, of course. Or, oh, she just muscled them into it because she's so convincing. None of that is really true.
This is a good stuff. What my favorite part about this interview is I forgot we were doing an interview for like 15 minutes of us just shooting the breeze about the sales talk.
So,
Yeah, right. This is so easy to talk about for us, and because this is, by the way, we've only had like 2 conversations
yeah,
ever. This
that's
is
true.
like number 3. So obviously you have a lot of the same experience that I have. We understand the problems on the MSP side, and MSPs have heard me say that 6 ways from Sunday, like all of these things different ways. But what I'd like to do is I want to zoom back out a minute because that's this. So you cut your teeth selling insurance, which is, by the way, a lot like traditional managed services.
It is. It is.
Almost the same motion. In reality, an MSP is promising value in the future. That's what peace of mind is.
Yeah.
I call it surrogate value in my book, where I say
Mm-hmm.
there's a good chance that in the future I will be valuable to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what peace of mind is. In my head, there's nothing compelling about that. Because, by the way, you're not incurring any liability. Really, like if I get hacked, you're not the one who might get in trouble. You don't have to tell all my clients, and your reputation, Mr. MSP, isn't the one on the line. It's my reputation on the line. So you're
Yeah.
not truly insurance. You're not insuring me against the reputational damage. You might be
Sure.
insuring me, whatever, against the cost of, I have to pay a premium, whatever, a deductible to an insurance company instead of a ransom note. But anyway, it's surrogate value.
Sure.
So that's a digression. How did you find managed services?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was working at an insurance agency in Nashville, and I I don't know. I think the Teslas came out. They had put an article out that insurance policies were going to be automatically assigned to the Tesla owner, and they were going to automatically determine risk. And I mean, it is a little bit funny that in the insurance world, people who are imperfect are determining risk, which really a computer system should do. There's a finite,
Mm-hmm.
set of data that goes into a system, and then there's a risk determination, and that determines your rate. Why are people in control of that? I don't know. At one point, it was about morale, where you would bring somebody into your office and you would assess them and interview them and determine, how likely they were to get into an accident. And that's how you would give somebody an insurance rate. And then,
Right.
there have been some improvements. So I thought that was strange. And I had this overwhelming feeling, this almost sickening feeling after I saw that article that insurance agents were going to be eliminated. And then I really needed to move toward technology.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a friend of mine, a broker who I would call all the time when I couldn't sell, through my typical channels, I'd have to go through his channels. He said that he had a SaaS company reach out to him in New York City, and I was living in the suburbs of Long Island. And he's like, "Oh, I would never work in the city." He's like, "I would never sell SaaS products." And I was like, "Give me the number for the guy, the recruiter who called you." And he's like, "Okay." And I called him, I left him a voicemail, and I was like, "Hey, my friend's never going to move to New York City, but I will. You should interview me." And I think, I didn't realize how sales forward that was of me to do that. And he called me right away. He's like, "Oh," he's like, "I have no idea who you are, but you want to work here? Like, come in for an interview." And I got the job that way.
So that's this story of you going out headhunting, getting a job in SaaS. And that's how you got the job at the medical software company. And then was there a clean transition from there right into managed services, or what was that transition like?
Right. I just decided that I was going to start my own lead gen company, actually.
Okay.
I did. I just said technology is taking over insurance people, and I just need to start my own lead gen company. I had a couple of clients, but my first real serious client owned an MSP, and I didn't really know much about it. And I put together a strategy for him, and he grew pretty quickly. And then he introduced me to a couple of his colleagues, and I kind of hyper-focused the lead generation for MSPs in particular.
Right.
Yeah.
So your first MSP, you had never worked with one, but you understood lead generation. Also, you had worked in insurance, which, as I said, the sales motion is remarkably similar. The value proposition, remarkably similar, actually.
Right.
Clearly, because you got this guy results right away. Like, what kind of results are we talking about? Do you remember like what you were able to achieve for him?
Yeah. It was 8 years ago when nobody was doing LinkedIn lead gen, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So cringe if you want, but back then it was cold email people were just starting to kind of pick up on it. And it was just getting a little bit crowded, very, very expensive to facilitate because ZoomInfo was just an absolute fortune. Discover org. Only enterprise organizations were able to afford a subscription to the database. It was not affordable at all whatsoever. So, and then there weren't that many bots out there. So you really had to pick like the right bot to configure. And this wasn't just purchasing a tool and configuring it. I had to have something custom built by collaborating with the engineering team at the company. And it was the same strategy. It was very simple. The questions are the same questions that I use today. Who's helping you guys with this stuff? Do you have an outsourced IT provider, or do you have somebody internal? And more of like just decision tree logic. And we set up 5 to 10 discovery meetings virtually every month just by consistent messaging on LinkedIn.
Right. Just going and getting leads. And then obviously they closed because he kept you around and he told other people about it. So there were good leads.
Yeah.
And you've been pretty much, MSP isn't the only thing that you do, or is it the only thing you do now? Because you've been in the channel for almost a decade now.
Yep. Ever since then, I think he said to me, I'm gonna introduce you to my friends, but you have to be focused on MSPs only.
Right.
Okay. I think at the time I was also serving insurance companies, right? Because they also need leads. But it's so similar, right? For both insurance and for managed services, you can only really have a good conversation when you're coming up for renewal on a contract. You really can't force anybody to do anything outside of that date. So collecting that information and then following up at the right time is essential. So he's like, yeah, if I'm going to introduce you to my friends, you got to dedicate yourself to managed services. I was like, okay, great. Let's do it.
We're a very tribal people, managed services.
Yes. I don't know why that was a requirement. Looking back, it's kind of funny. Why would that be a requirement? But I think there was maybe a need for someone to really figure it out. It seemed like kind of a desperate plea.
For sure. A lot of the companies now weren't around back then. They were just starting up. And by the way, most of the companies in the channel, they don't succeed for most MSPs. That's why they have such high churn. Like most lead generators that are MSP focused have huge churn issues because they can't get results for people. So sometimes I feel like it's important that we ground these conversations for the listener. And the reason I'm saying this is it would make us sound very out of touch if Nicole and I just sat here and went, yeah, leads is easy. We know how to do it in a heartbeat. And we can do it every single time. When in reality, getting leads for an MSP is very difficult. However, we know how to do it. And so once you know how to do it, once that genie is like out of the bottle, then the way you talk about how hard it is a little bit different because we can contextualize the effort because we have results on the back end of it. So, like I'm fond of saying hard work is the easiest part because there's no prerequisite to working hard. Anybody can work hard. No degree required, no genetics, no connections, no tools, no partnerships. If you know what to do and you just have to outwork the guy next to you, then you can win. You just have to outwork. There's nothing stopping you from working harder than the guy next to you. And that's what people forget about lead gen is that they want it to be, as I said in ScaleCon, they want it to be complicated and easy. But it's actually simple and hard. No, just go do these things and do it more and do it better. And that's sort of been your mantra. You don't want to just like break through the brick wall with your forehead. I'm going to make 10,000 dials a day. You were optimizing for conversations, not optimizing for dials. How does that mindset translate into the way that you advise MSPs today? Like today, obviously the tactics evolve with sales, right?
Oh, definitely.
But what are you advising MSPs to do today to get more conversations?
Yeah, obviously the LinkedIn messaging doesn't work anymore. It really doesn't. And there was like a hard stop on that for sure. And cold email doesn't either. I do still think that warm calling is well and alive. It's just that folks who are going to win with some of these traditional ways of connecting with people are those that know how to build relationships. So, there's nothing new and fantastical and AI driven that is like this golden nugget that nobody has found out about. And I have the secret information. It isn't. It's the same tactics, strategies that have always worked, which is building a relationship with somebody who may need your help and then, showing them how you can help them, sometimes reframing the mindset. But, the way that it's being done today is definitely more human as we're kind of stretching the rubber band on like automation and efficiency and AI. It's kind of snapped back a little bit because it's so overwhelming that just walking into someone's business, saying hello, introducing yourself, letting them know that you're right across the street. I can see you from my office. If you ever need help, I'm here. Here's what I specialize in. And then here's something of value in exchange. That's really been working very well.
That's amazing. So just bringing it back to the human stuff, warm calling, talk about that a little bit just so that the people know, like, how do I warm them up and what does that mean? Like, just give me the high level on how to execute that.
Yeah, I think some type of activity that may be more human as a first touch would be best, right? Like walking in, saying hello, and then following up via phone would be an example of a warm call.
Got it.
Calling them without any prior knowledge is always going to be cold. Sending them something via email first and then calling them could also be a warm call. It's not as effective.
Yeah.
There's got to be something to call on, Brian. There's got to be a reason for my call. Otherwise, it's harassment.
Right.
Right?
Right. Otherwise, it's awkward, right?
Yes.
Right. You have to justify the call. And that makes sense. So you're inviting them to something that's time sensitive. You're offering them something that is clear, it's already developed, that's free or low cost. Or you're asking them a question that is related to something that just happened in their business.
Yeah.
Trigger-based outbound is one of the ways I categorize that. Like if there is a trigger, you notice a business just raised money. You notice that their IT staffing headcount went down by 1 in LinkedIn. You get an alert in your Sales Navigator and you call them and go, hey, you don't know me. I know this is out of the blue. I've been studying your guys' company for a while because you're on my list of companies I'd like to work with one day. And what I noticed was that your IT headcount is changing. Now, the reason I'm calling you is we have this blank that we develop for companies to help them shorten their runway to either replace a person or make sure that their IT doesn't get overwhelmed. It's completely free. It's a book that we wrote on how to do that, how to downsize your IT department without upsizing your risk, written by me. I would love to bring it over. And by the way, I know there's a Porto's on the same street as you. I don't know if you're like me, but that place is like crack.
Oh.
Let me go to Porto's. I'll grab a little cake. I'll bring it by. If you did what I just said, you're nothing like the other cold calls they're getting that day. Right? I mean, do you think that's too schmucky, or is that an example of a warm call?
No, I love that. That's an example of a warm call for sure. As long as you're a human being and you have something to say that's relevant to them, I think it's warm. It would be nice to have an event happen before, but I think anything like that is definitely warm.
So an event happened before, meaning it sounds like if somebody was like, I need more leads right now. I need leads. Nicole, I'll do anything. So the first thing is make a list of businesses you want to work with and walk into their business.
Right. I mean, you need to know who is going to be worth your time. I know that you're pretty big on creating ideal client profiles. We've at least talked about that. And I think everyone thinks about ideal client profiles is maybe a little off base, right? You only have so much time and so much marketing dollars. Why spend it on everyone? Spend it on the folks you really want to work with. That's just going to be the best approach. So create a list of people that you want to work with. Find a way to put yourself in front of them if you can. It didn't used to always be that way, right? You find a way to reach the right person at the right time with the right message used to be the thing. And if you can, enter the conversation that's already going on in their mind. That used to be like the stellar 4 ways. Now, it's gotten more specific. Right person, right time, right message, and also in the way that they prefer to be communicated with.
Yeah.
Which is now just not email. We don't know what it is yet, but what options do we have left other than to put myself in front of you because you don't want me to call you and you don't want me to email you? It's too overwhelming. I really don't think anybody wants to be texted either.
Right.
So in your face may be the only option we have.
Right. So we have right person, right message, right time, and then we need to add to that the right medium.
Yes.
How do we deliver that message to that person where they want to receive it? Right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Easy. I mean, no problem. Just go do that, guys.
Easy, guys.
But no, what I like about these conversations is, and this is going to turn into a compliment, so prepare yourself. But what I like about these conversations is that sales is such a mystery to people, and it's such a black box. But they forget that that's how they used to feel about the technical stuff they do every day. How to build a hypervisor and how to load balance a bunch of servers and dynamically make sure a server has the resources they need right when they need them and then turn them off when you don't need them. You didn't know how to do that 20 years ago. You had no idea. You just thought it was exciting and you wanted to learn it. The difference is that you were maybe more compelled to learn it because it was more interesting to you. And you probably have happened into sales because you have to, not because you want to.
Sure.
But if you can, what does Mike say? If you can be in a bad mood for no reason, you can be in a good mood for no reason. And if you have to do it, there's no reason it can't be something that you want to do. You actually get to pick what you want. You can reframe it, right? And here's why I bring that up. Conversations like this, where it's just a couple of people talking shop about how'd you do that? How'd you do that? And your story of accidentally being a top performer everywhere by just sort of finding the way that made sense to you. Because to you, it's more natural than it might be to the average listener because you're a natural salesperson, quote unquote. But it wasn't because it was handed to you. It wasn't just because you're a woman. It wasn't because of you were in a less competitive city. Whatever BS they're using, the listener, you might be using, or you maybe have used in the past. Probably you're better now than you used to be if you're listening to this show, right? But in the past, you went, no, nobody understands. Phoenix is the worst, or Dallas is the worst. They'll never know how competitive it is here. If you always has had those reasons, you got to understand that it's just people figuring it out and trying stuff and then not stopping. And that's how you create success and lead gen. I mean, do you think I'm oversimplifying that, Nicole?
No. I don't. It could be a little bit intimidating if comparing like somebody who may feel like they don't have the natural skill to someone who does, but it's just as challenging for somebody who has the natural skill, because we at first we cannot identify what allows us and what enables us to have those good days and those good outcomes, right?
Yeah.
We have some good conversations and then we don't. And sometimes we win and sometimes we don't, but we don't know how to identify what did I do to get me there.
Yeah.
So there is an algorithmic approach to predictable sales. There is. It's just honing in on what those elements are and then working to strengthen those muscles.
Right. I love that. And as another person who I'm going to say has my natural gifting is bent towards sales, like it's more natural for me. I think it's obvious for me to admit. But another thing I've observed is that when you're naturally good at something, you are not good at being bad at things. So meaning if you're a natural athlete and then you're a natural baseball player and then you play a new team and they strike you out, you have a full existential crisis. Whereas like you're not used to losing. So you mentally, you don't know how to cope. You've never had to because you never lose. But what's kind of beautiful about sales is how little we can actually control what other people do. We can have perfect prospects who need it, they have budget, and they just don't sign anyway. And we did everything we were supposed to do, and they just say, we're going to wait a year. And what's very important, the advantage you have, let me say it this way, if you're not a quote unquote, if you're not non-natural, is that you're going to have such a better time categorizing those anomalies.
Yeah.
And understanding that it isn't about you because you don't find any of your sense of self in your ability to do this. You're just experimenting, and you can gamify it and make it an adventure, and you can go, wow, I thought I did every single thing right there. Okay, well, that one I lost. What's the next one?
Yeah,
that's my encouragement to anybody who's like listening to two people who are like top performers in sales and going, I don't relate to you people. You might as well be speaking Klingon. I just want you to remember that there are advantages to being not natural at stuff, to being a non-natural at something. And sales is such a marathon that you can't just rest on those laurels. I mean, if you just did what was comfortable for you, Nicole, you wouldn't have been number 1. You would have been number 30 if you didn't want it, right?
There's also a disadvantage from having all of that experience. I recently was given some very good advice from somebody who's newer to sales, who's just more naive and probably has less of the bad habits that us salespeople tend to pick up over the years. And we forget to be a human being who listens and cares and is empathetic. So I like newness to sales and naivety to sales tactic. Because at the end of the day, it's really just about creating a human connection.
Right.
So I don't know. I think anybody could be good at it if they figure out what works for them to connect with another human being. Simple as it gets.
Yeah. I love how simple you've made that. You've got chops. Wouldn't even talk about that you like started a company and then sold it in 10 months and then you started another one. And like we have all these accolades we didn't even get to. Maybe I'll mention some of that stuff. I'll sing your praises in the intro. But let me just say this. I know I've kept you longer than I was supposed to, but what are you doing now? And how do MSPs hear more about it and get a hold of you if they're interested?
Yeah. So I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Frictionless IT. I was working with them fractionally, and now I'm there full time. I build go-to-market systems for IT and MSP professionals only on HubSpot in particular. You got to have a place to your mission control center, essentially, if you will. There's lots of complicated CRMs out there. Just chose HubSpot for one of many reasons. As far as like lead generation is concerned, I do make recommendations to folks that specialize in that. Right now, I'm having a lot of fun with Mike Bakaish. We've got a couple of clients that we're working on together. And it's kind of amazing what you can do with, a good system, simply built to be able to, see what's going on with lead generation, but also work the sales pipeline. And then like an activated sales arm where there's just like execution, boots on the ground, doing the things that need to be done that you talk about, right? That consistency of every day. Pairing those two together are leading IT companies to outcomes. And those are real meetings, not fake meetings that cancel. Because they were just telling an SDR that they'll meet just to get them off the phone. Real meetings with businesses in their local geographic area that have real problems that an IT business can actually solve.
Right. Mike, quick shout out to Mike. He may be even the person you're referencing, but Mike is a guy who calls himself very new to sales. And I work with him quite a bit in our road shows. And there's times when he says things that are infuriating because they're so simple that I'm like, right? Yeah, it took me 3 paragraphs to say that. And you said it in 4 words, and oh, right. That's literally all it is. Collect recon, qualify people, sell them, the way he does it is so great. Another shout out to my boy, Mike, another mutual contact of ours. So anyway, Nicole, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure any MSP who needs strategic support, especially if you're a HubSpot and you're all in on HubSpot, talk to Nicole. My HubSpot experience is 2 years old and therefore basically useless because HubSpot's like a totally different tool. It's changing pretty fast. So that's a full-time job for you, keeping up.
Oh my God, it is. Yeah.
But yeah, you've been really great. I'll link your stuff in the show notes, and thanks again for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. This was fun.